Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Chainsaw Reacts podcast, episode number 32. And today, guys, we are covering three topics, and those topics in order are number one, Rupert Wyatt, aka the director of Gambit, has left the project. We're going to talk a little bit about that, talk a little bit of the speculation, why he left the project, and going into is Gambit, the movie in general, in danger because the director has left, and all that kind of speculation. So that's the first topic we're going to get into. The second topic is King Kong vs. Godzilla. This is some massive news. I can't wait to get into this. That's going to be the second topic, talking a little bit about the setup, the build up to that epic movie of seeing King Kong fighting Godzilla. So that'll be the second topic there. The third and final topic will be, will Batman appear in the Arrow Flash TV universe? Essentially, will Batman appear in the DC TV universe alongside with Arrow, Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, and all that nonsense? So anyways, let's jump ahead into the first topic. So here it is. Rupert Wyatt, aka Gambit director, has left. And this is a big piece of information because at first it was like, okay, Channing Tatum was on the fence of leaving and all this kind of stuff, and then that got settled. So we're like, okay, fine, okay, good. The movie's back on track now. Channing Tatum has fixed the issues or whatever was going on behind the scenes, because it was not confirmed why Channing Tatum was supposedly getting ready to walk away from the Gambit project altogether. So that got fixed behind the scenes. No official confirmation of what that whole deal was. And now the director, Rupert Wyatt, has left. He is gone. Now, the statement he put out, basically announcing he was departing from the project Gambit, was basically talking about how the production start was pushed back a couple months, and that was conflicting with other projects, so he decided to opt out. Because originally, I believe it was October of, this upcoming October, next month, was supposed to be the start date of filming and all that kind of stuff for Gambit, and that was going to be the set course. And now with the supposed, not confirmed, but supposed budget increase, and basically they were wanting to make the film bigger than it actually was, and causing the production budget to be higher than it was, caused production to be pushed back into January of 2016, and basically push back pre-production, or maybe they're already in pre-production, but basically filming and all that kind of stuff for the actual film in January instead of October of 2015. It got pushed back to January of 2016, and then that's what caused the director to opt out. Now, there's three sides to every story. One person's side of the story, the other person's side of the story, and the truth. And in this case, there's one side of the story for Rupert Wyatt's reason why he left. There's the Fox's side of the reason, like behind the scenes, maybe there was more than meets the eye of why he left the project. And the third, basically, side of the story is the actual truth of the story, like what's being told by said party and what's the actual truth in the whole matter. So for me, I'm not sure if I believe exactly that it's the production date that pushed him off the project. Maybe, there was something more behind the scenes. I'm not really sure, but there's been some speculation that since Fox meddled with the Fantastic Four script and overall basically made Fantastic Four the garbage that everyone says it is. I don't think it was complete garbage, but you can definitely tell Fox meddled a lot in that movie and changed a lot of things. That was not the original idea of Josh Tranks's vision. So in this case, now we're talking about Gambit, which is basically Fox is wanting Gambit to be the next Wolverine. It's been speculated that that's what the whole plan is to make this huge budget of a film, Gambit, and basically make this to become the next Wolverine, since we are losing Hugh Jackman, unfortunately, in 2017 after his third Wolverine film is out. So maybe Fox is like, okay, well, we have to up the ante in this movie. We have to up the ante for Gambit, and maybe that caused some concerns with Channing Tatum, who had an original idea for Gambit, and now Fox is wanting to increase it, and maybe that's why Channing Tatum wanted to leave. Now the director is gone. It makes me think that there's more to the story than meets the eye, that maybe Fox is meddling too much into all of this, and then maybe that's the case. So now the question is Gambit, the movie in general, in danger because the director has opted to leave and he's out, and now we have to find a director before the beginning of production in January? Now, that might not be a hard thing to do, but the question is it to the point now where Fox has too high hopes for this movie, and maybe no director will sign on and agree with it, thinking this is way too much for a character? Not even, we've only seen one version of the character on screen for like 5 to 10 minutes in the first Wolverine solo film, and this is not even the same actor. So is it going to work? And on one hand, I believe Gambit is not in danger because Fox can easily get a director to come in, but the question is, what type of caliber of director? They're not going to get like a Steven Spielberg, but let's hope to God they don't get a director that has not directed anything. We need to have a director that knows how to film action, to film, dialogue scenes, to basically get the feel of this movie, because I have a feeling if Gambit has any potential to be successful, it will if they get the right person behind the camera to direct Tatum and whoever else is a part of this movie, because we don't know for sure who's all involved in the movie as on screen. So we have no idea whether it's be X-Men or Deadpool. We don't know who's going to be a part of this movie. So there's that. On one other hand, I think that it is in danger because let's say they get a director that comes in, he's directed a couple movies, the movie comes out, Gambit, it's a major flop. It's another flop for Fox. So that's a really bad sign there because they've already flopped majorly with Fantastic Four. But overall, I believe at the end of the day, Gambit is not in danger yet. I think that with the director leaving, it does a huge pinch, a really kick in the side, but it's not like a complete like beat down, and the movie has no chance for survival. I think that Fox has big plans and they want to do big things with this movie, and they hope that Gambit becomes the next franchise, like I mentioned, like Wolverine. So maybe that's why they pushed the budget up. Maybe that's why the budget is $150 million supposedly for the Gambit movie. But I personally thought the reason why the budget increased is not because they wanted to up the ante. I thought it was because they wanted to add in X-Men, cast. They wanted to add in Deadpool. Maybe they wanted to add in Wolverine, somebody in the movie. I'm not really sure. And the thing is, we don't know the timeline of Gambit. We believe Gambit is in the present timeline, or he could be in the past timeline in the 80s where Apocalypse is happening. But we don't know for sure. So it's up in the air at this point. So at the end of the day, Rupert Wyatt leaving is a big kick in the side, a kick in the face, if you will. But it's not a complete beatdown to the point where the project has no hope of getting redemption and actually being brought to the table and actually being brought to the screens to be shown, because he was attached, but then again, this happens a lot. But for this type of movie that has already went through a major problem where behind the scenes, where the main cast, the main guy, Channing Tatum, who was producing the movie as well, wanting this to happen, he finally is able to push ahead, and now he basically at one point wanted to walk. That raises a lot of red flags, like what the hell is going on? So for me personally, it's going to be interesting to see what Fox does next, because I don't believe Fox has released a statement talking about and saying that they wish that Rupert Wyatt would have stayed or anything. I think they just kind of kept it quiet, and they're trying to find a director right now. So the interesting thing is going to be what happens in the coming months before January, and if it comes to the point where in January they do not have a director, then Gambit's probably going to be postponed until 2017. I mean, I just don't know what else they're going to be doing exactly, because I believe if they push the production of starting a film in January of 2016, I believe that's probably already pushed back Gambit past October of 2016 release date. But I don't know for sure. Maybe they're able to figure all that stuff out and get it done and get the movie out before then. But let's just hope they don't rush it. But if they don't get a director in time, I think that's going to be... If they don't get a director by January, the start date of production for the film, and they still have no director, that's going to raise a huge red flag for all the people that are saying, well, this isn't really that bad. It's going to be bad. Because if they can't get a director in a couple of months, I mean... Look, there's plenty of directors out there, but it's finding that right one. But, I mean, they could find a director at any given time. So, we'll see what happens. But for now, this story is pretty interesting. I think there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than we've been told. But that happens a lot. There's things that they just don't let out, and that's fine. But it's just really interesting to hear the story, because Channing Tatum wanted to walk. Now the director is gone, so who knows what's going to happen next. If Channing Tatum walks, this movie is done. That's the main thing. If Channing Tatum actually leaves the project, Gambit is finished. That's my personal opinion. So there you have that. Let me take a sip of the drink, guys, and we'll get to the second topic. Okay, so second topic is King Kong vs. Godzilla. This, to me, is actually way bigger in the news than Gambit director leaving, but I'm blown away by this piece of information, because hearing that not only is they're making a King Kong movie and they have a Godzilla sequel planned, and the Godzilla, the first movie in 2014, the reboot American version, made a profit. They're getting Gareth Edwards back to direct, but not only are they doing that, but they're also doing a King Kong movie. Now they're bringing them together to fight, and I am just blown away by this piece of information. I honestly didn't believe they would actually pull it off. I didn't think that it would actually happen because, they announced Godzilla. It came out. It was a hit. A lot of people, people had issues with the movie because there was a lot of teasing leading up to Godzilla actually in the end of the movie. But now that we've seen Godzilla, there should not be any teasing of him anymore in the sequel that's supposed to be dated in 2018, I believe. And now we have a King Kong movie, which is also being planned for 2017, called Kong Skull Island, which is a prequel. And then the report says this, that so Kong Skull Island is scheduled to release in March of 2017. Then the Godzilla sequel in 2018. And then finally, a third movie, which will see King Kong and Godzilla meet and fight it out, or potentially team up, or more than likely both. But that's going to be interesting there. Now, this is a pretty interesting piece of information because they plan on doing one King Kong movie, another sequel to Godzilla. So we have two Godzilla movies, one King Kong movie, and then they meet up in King Kong versus Godzilla, or whatever they decide to call it. I'm assuming that's what they're going to call it, but who knows. But with this piece of information, the first question that comes to mind is not, is the movie going to be mostly about them fighting, or is it going to be kind of a build up to them actually meeting face to face and then the fight? But the bigger question is, how is this actually going to happen? Because it's not the King Kong we're going to see in the King Kong Skull Island, the Kong Skull Island prequel, and in the likeliness of King Kong versus Godzilla, is not the same King Kong we saw in Peter Jackson's King Kong 2005. This is going to be a new King Kong, a rebooted King Kong, if you will. But the question is, how is King Kong going to fight Godzilla? They have the biggest Godzilla we've ever seen on screen was in the Godzilla 2014 American version, Gareth Edwards directed version. That is the biggest Godzilla that we've ever seen on screen. And with that comparison, King Kong would probably rise up in height to maybe Godzilla's leg. So King Kong would be very, very tiny compared to Godzilla. So the question is, how would this actually work? And I think how this would actually work is one or two things, and it's pretty good theories around online, but I think that it would make a lot of sense, but we'll see what happens. So the first theory is that in Godzilla 2, not Kong Skull Island, but in Godzilla 2, essentially that Godzilla is fighting what we suppose is Mothra as the main villain of Godzilla 2, or King Ghidorah or Rodan. They were all three basically teased. 3 was King Ghidorah, Rodan, and Mothra were teased for Godzilla 2, but we don't know if they're all three going to appear or just one or two of them, but I don't know. But the theory is that Godzilla will shrink at the end of Godzilla 2. He would shrink down to kind of the level of King Kong. So that was kind of how they were going to fix that, where Godzilla would shrink down. Or the second a theory is the opposite, that King Kong at the end of Kong Skull Island somehow gets into some radiation or something like that, and King Kong grows to the size of Godzilla. So a humongous ape the size of Godzilla in the 2014 version fighting out in a city would be brutal. But that is the two theories of how this could possibly work, because if this Godzilla that's in continuity from the 2014 English version, I say English because there's a bunch of Godzilla Japanese versions, obviously, a bunch of Godzilla Japanese movies, so that Godzilla, is continuity, is in canon of this monster, the King Kong Godzilla universe, I'm calling it now, then definitely you have to either size down Godzilla or size up King Kong. So that's going to be interesting how they handle that, but apparently they have an idea of how that would work. So I'm assuming it's either those, or that when we see King Kong and Kong Skull Island, he's already a big enough ape to fight Godzilla. So maybe they'll already answer that with Kong Skull Island, where Kong is literally the size of Godzilla, and there's nothing have to be fixed or anything like that. So if that's the case, Kong will be ginormous in the Kong Skull Island movie. So if that's the case, that'd be interesting to see that. But anyways, on to the main thing. So the story continues, not only talking about them fighting, but also talks about that they possibly could team up. I don't know about that. I mean, we've kind of, we've seen them fight. We've seen that there's two alternate endings where Kong wins and Godzilla wins. But for me, teaming up, I don't know. The only way I could say that they would possibly team up and I would at least go, okay, I go with this because we've already seen King Kong and Godzilla fight. We've already seen it, but the way they could do it now is ginormous and probably make it a huge spectacle, a 20, 25 minute plus fight. But the thing is, if King Kong and Godzilla teamed up, and that was going to be a team to face a bigger foe, who could the foe be? In my personal opinion, if we're gonna go with Godzilla villains that could possibly take on, because there's been one major villain that's a humongous villain of Godzilla, and this villain can take on multiple creatures at once. Excuse, not people, creatures essentially. Godzilla, Mothra, Rodan, take on a bunch of them. Is King Ghidorah. King Ghidorah could take on King Kong and Godzilla at the same time, and that would be a really interesting fight to where they meet up 20, 25, 30 minutes into the movie, King Kong versus Godzilla. They fight it out once, and then they separate from each other, and then they fight again. And then after this fight's over, all of a sudden, King Ghidorah, who was in, let's say, hypothetically Godzilla 2, but didn't die, and then King Ghidorah awakens and comes back and fights both King Kong and Godzilla at basically the climactic last 30 minutes of the movie. That would be epic. Then they could team up, and then now they go their separate ways, and maybe they meet up again for some other reason. But I think that'd be a really cool way to kind of handle it. I mean, if they want to do the direction of team up, let's not do a King Kong versus Godzilla, and then King Kong Godzilla versus King Ghidorah as the sequel. If they're going to do it, let's do it all in one movie. Let's not expand it out and do it too much, because for us, if we see an entire movie of King Kong versus Godzilla, they fight it out the entire movie, then at the last minute before this credits start rolling, King Ghidorah awakens and then they team up. Now we have to wait for the team up movie? No, put it all in one movie, because let's think about it. King Kong and Godzilla are basically on the same side, but when they meet up with each other, they don't know how to comprehend and talk to each other, because King Kong is a gorilla and Godzilla is like a lizard slash dinosaur type creature, so they're not going to be able to communicate. But when a bigger foe comes up on the horizon, King Ghidorah, in my opinion, it would make sense that they team up at that point, because they both understand, hey, this guy is worse than you, and the other one's like, hey, this one's worse than you too. Let's team up and take it out. And then at that point, then they become buddy and buddy. But overall, some people don't actually like this idea. People don't like the idea of them teaming up at all. But I'm just saying, if that was the case, and they want to do the fight, obviously, because Batman v Superman are going to be fighting, and then they're going to team up, and they're going to become the Justice League. So if that's the case, and they want to go in that direction of what Warner Brothers is doing with the DC property, with the two biggest characters, fine. King Kong vs. Godzilla, they fight, then they team up and take on the big adversary, the villain. So that would make sense to me if they went that direction, but a lot of people were like, oh, this is awesome news, until they said, or unite, and they team up. Like, oh, well, they're going to team up? So that's going to be interesting. Or they could go in the direction of where they team up right off the bat, and then they start fighting each other. That would be interesting as well. They team up to fight something else, and then after the fight's over, then both of them kind of have a disagreement, or they both kind of, understand that, I don't really know if I like this other creature, and then they start fighting it out. I mean, that'd be an interesting take on it as well, where they team up and then they fight. But I think the fighting aspect, two big fights, then they team up to fight King Ghidorah in my own storyboard of the movie, the last third act. That'd be really interesting to see that overall. I'm really curious to know what you guys think about this particular topic, if you guys have an opinion for it, because I grew up, and I grew up watching Godzilla movies, and when I watched King Kong vs. Godzilla, I was like, this is such an awesome movie. I mean, it was made back in the 60s. Yes, I believe it was made back in the 60s. And the movie, there was some funny moments, and it wasn't really taken too seriously. But it was an interesting movie overall. But with what they're doing now and how they presented Godzilla and how we think they're going to present Kong Skull Island with the prequel and how they're going to set that up, if Kong Skull Island is basically tonally wise similar to what Godzilla was, then I think that it's going to be a pretty interesting, dramatic, dark film where we get to see these two legendary creatures fight it out. So definitely be out on the look for that. I'm really hoping we're going to hear some more information about that in the coming months, because it's a pretty cool piece of information. So I got to give them props for actually doing something that's I'm actually really excited for. There's so many movies and stuff they announce, and so many things they're trying to do that I'm like, I'm not really interested in it. But this is a big piece of information. I'm like, oh my god, give me more information. So I'm really excited, as you can tell. Let me take a sip of the drink. We'll get to the third and final topic, guys. Oh my god. Third and final topic, of course, which is, should Batman be in the Arrow slash Flash universe, basically the DC TV universe? Now, right off the bat, if you're going to comment about this, you're going to say, look, Bruce Wayne appears in Gotham, and we don't really know. I mean, it might be confirmed. We don't know that it's in the same universe as Arrow and Flash. It's just in the past. So technically, Batman exists. Okay, well, if that's the case, then why have we not seen him yet? So, the thing is, though, Stephen Amell, who, of course, is playing Oliver Queen, a.k.a. Arrow, Green Arrow, has talked about crossing over with Supergirl and crossing over with maybe Gotham, but he's not really sure if that's going to work. But for me, it's like, look, yes, Gotham is a show. It has its villains. It has Bruce Wayne as a kid. And obviously, the way it's kind of tonally set up and the way they've kind of built the show, from what I've heard, I've not really watched the show. I've not actually watched it. I've only seen a couple of scenes, mainly the Jerome Joker scene and the police precinct. And I think I saw the first episode of the show, but I wasn't really interested in it, so I didn't continue watching. But from what I understand, Gotham, the show on Fox, is set in the past. It's not set in the current time as Legends of Tomorrow, Arrow, and Flash is happening currently, so Gotham's in the past. So, if that's the case, and let's say Gotham is connected to the Supergirl, Arrow, Flash, Legends of Tomorrow universe, then Batman exists. Then all these villains exist. And all of the sidekicks and potential for Batman exist. Now, to answer the simple question, should Batman be in the universe along with Arrow and Flash and all of them? Yes, 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 yes. The thing is, though, I want them to introduce him not right away. I want them to first introduce the idea of Batman with one of his sidekicks, or one of the people that he works with, not right away, because you want to build up to that moment. You want to build up to the Dark Knight showing up on an episode of Arrow. I think he should first show up on an episode of Arrow and then start crossing over into Flash and all that kind of stuff later. So how I would like them to introduce Batman into the world, whether it's connected to Gotham, whether it's the same kid, well, obviously not the same kid, but it's the same Bruce Wayne from Gotham, and now he's older, and now he's in the current timeline, or a different Batman, because Gotham is not on the same timeline, then you build it up by introducing either Robin or Nightwing, right off the bat, or introduce a villain so close to Batman. There is no other explanation of going, okay, well, it's an Arrow villain. It's a Batman villain, but we're going to make it for Arrow. Ra's al Ghul is a villain for any hero that pops up that's close to Batman. But if they introduce the Joker, it is the Joker, and he shows up in Arrow, you have now officially confirmed there is a Batman somewhere. If you introduce Nightwing or Robin in this case, or Batgirl, that'd be awesome, or Oracle, that is saying Batman is in your world. So introduce one of those characters first. A villain, I would prefer it be a hero and not a villain, to kind of go, Batman is near. So I'm going to mostly go with Nightwing. I think Nightwing would be a really good addition. We introduce Nightwing into Arrow, and he mentions that, his mentor, has been fighting crime for many, many years, way more than you, Oliver Queen, and then start making little references. They say he's the world's greatest detective, and I don't know if I believe that. They be just throwing out references, not saying Batman, but saying stuff to kind of go, oh my god, Batman's in the universe. And then, when it's the big reveal, then Batman shows up. So, I think that's how they should build it if they were to do it. I don't know if they're going to do it, but for me, that's the way I would like for them to introduce it, is first introduce a character so close to Batman, there's no way you can say, well, maybe Batman's in the universe, or maybe he isn't. He is definitely in the universe. They've made references. He's around. We just haven't seen him yet. That's how I would like them to do it. And what I think why I like Arrow so much is, well, not because it's not just because he's Arrow, it's a great character, but what I like is that how they've progressed Arrow's character to kind of be familiar to kind of Batman, but not exactly Batman. Arrow, in my personal opinion, the show and the character in general, is the closest we're going to get to Batman without seeing Batman. But once you introduce Batman in the universe, then we're no longer going to see Arrow as, we might see Arrow as the ripoff of Batman, but they could definitely change the character a little bit to not be so close to Batman's kind of lore and the idea of Batman. But once you see Batman, then we go, well, Arrow is not the closest thing to Batman. Batman's the closest thing to Batman. And the question will be, should they hire an actor who is the same age as Oliver Queen, Green Arrow, or a little older? Now, if they introduce Nightwing as the first character, then Batman is going to be older than Oliver Queen, older than everybody else, essentially, except for Firestorm's older self. I can't remember his name, the Doctor or whatever, the Professor or whatever. And but I think they would introduce kind of an older Batman. But if they bring in Robin or Batgirl, which is, before Batgirl gets her spine, basically shot through by Joker and causes her to become Oracle, then you could say it's a younger Batman, closer to the age of Oliver Queen and Arrow. So that'd be really cool to see that. Either or, I really don't care. But if I could pick an ideal, if I could personally pick my ideal thing and how they introduce Batman to the universe without seeing him just yet, but introduce that Batman is in the universe and he's coming. The way I would do it is bring in a villain that is so close to Batman that there's no way you can definitively say, well, Batman, that he could or could not, he is in the universe. I would say Joker, or possibly Penguin, or possibly not Death. Well, they brought in Deathstroke, so they could do that. Then Deadshot, no. I'm trying to think of all the characters they've not. Mr. Freeze, that might be interesting. The Riddler, that'd be interesting as well. I mean, Scarecrow, I mean, they could do that. Bring in a villain that is so connected to Batman, and then at that point, you bring in the villain, and then you bring in the sidekick, Robin, Nightwing, or Batgirl. Now, if you bring in Nightwing, older Batman. Robin, Batgirl, the potential of a younger Batman. Don't really matter. Just pick either of those. Let's just say for this sake, Robin. Robin shows up. He's a 17, 18-year-old Robin. He's a couple years into being Robin. Let's just go with that, right? Not Nightwing. It's Dick Grayson Robin, and this Dick Grayson Robin is a couple of years into Robin, and so there you go. Robin shows up, and then the first episode, they fight alongside each other, they get along. Then the next episode, they start making references to Batman. And then Batman shows up at the end of the climax of this story arc with this particular villain, whoever they've introduced, and that's how Batman gets introduced. So I think that would be work really well. Now, to continue on with this kind of idea, because I've been thinking about this a lot, I've really thought a lot about this. If Batman was introduced into the Arrow, Flash, Supergirl, Legends of Tomorrow universe, would Batman get a show? Would Batman have its own show connected with everything else? And my personal answer is yes. I believe so. I mean, look, you introduce Batman, you introduce Robin, Nightwing, Batgirl, whoever. You introduce these characters, you can't say, well, Batman will show up from time to time. No, it's Batman. You make him get a show. Now, whether that has to replace a show that's currently on TV or basically becomes a part of something, I'm not really sure. But I don't want Batman to be just tagged on to a show or basically become a part of someone's team. Batman needs his own show, and then the crossovers can happen with all that kind of stuff, which would be really awesome. But they would have to get somebody that makes it believable as being Batman, and this person has to understand that, look, if Batman is a huge hit on the TV shows and he's popping up on Flash episode, a Arrow episode, a Legends of Tomorrow episode, look, they're going to be like, you got to give us a show. You got to give us a Batman show. And I'm not going to say no. I'll be like, yes, hell yes, do it. Because Batman, regardless of what you think about Superman, Batman is the face of DC. Superman might be close second. Superman's probably the face of the Justice League, but Batman is DC. DC is Batman. That's what it is. So once you introduce a humongous major character like Batman, you can't go back. You can't just go, okay, well, he'll appear in from time to time in seasons. Nope. You gotta bring him into a TV show. He has to have his own show. And then you can start going the whole crossover aspect and bringing other characters in, him go to other shows. Then you do that. You introduce him first with a show, and then you bring him into his own series. Then you're set. I think that'd be perfect. Now, whether or not this will happen depends solely on if the writers can handle another show, and if Gotham the show writers and Fox will allow, excuse me, my voice just went there, will allow that to happen because it just solely depends on what plans they have for Gotham. Because I've been hearing a lot of speculation that the Gotham show will have a lot more relations to Batman later on down the road, and they have more ideas. Just depends. It just depends on if Warner Brothers, the DC, will allow Arrow and all of them to kind of take hold of Batman as Batman, not Bruce Wayne, but Batman. So we'll have to see. Man, my voice cracked earlier. That was bad. Woo. That's what happens when you just ramble on forever and ever and ever, guys. You just never know what's gonna happen. So there you have it. Overall, yeah, Batman, bring him on to the Arrow show. It will be beautiful. It will be magic. It will be heaven. Do it. Do it. Arrow writers, do it. Anyways, guys, what do you think of all this information? What do you think about Rupert Wyatt leaving the Gambit project? What do you think of King Kong vs. Godzilla? What do you think of Batman? Should Batman show up in the DC TV universe? Let me know in the comment section below, guys. Thank you guys for listening to episode 32 of the Chainsaw Reacts podcast. Check out past podcasts if you have not. Hope you guys enjoy those as well. Hope you guys enjoy this episode. Anyways, I'm done rambling. Thank you guys for listening to the podcast. Peace out.